أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, thank you for coming tonight to continue the fourth session of Seerah, inshallah. And we did last Saturday. Just to inform you that we'll stick to once a week. I think it's better this way instead of twice a week. So inshallah we're going to skip Saturday and just do every Tuesday inshallah ta'ala, because it takes a lot of effort to prepare for this. So last time we spoke about the beginning of the lineage of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the Prophet Ismail alayhi salam in Mecca. Also through Jurhum, the tribe of Jurhum who lived in Mecca. So we're going to continue the lineage of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through Ismail alayhi salam and through the tribe of Jurhum in Mecca. So the religious leadership in Mecca was with Ismail alayhi salam and has continued down the line with his ancestors or descendants. So Jurhum never had the religious authority over the Kaaba. It was always in the hands of the descendants of Ismail alayhi salam. But the political leadership was with Jurhum. Now Jurhum stayed in Mecca for a very long time, about 2,000 years. So they became corrupt, tyrannical. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent on them Khuza'ah, and Khuza'ah kicked them out of Mecca. This is another tribe that came from Yemen and settled in Hijaz. So they went in and invaded Mecca and kicked Jurhum out. Now Jurhum, before they left, they did two things. Number one, they dumped the well of Zamzam. They filled it up and they erased all of its marks and stole the treasures that were inside the Kaaba. Now Khuza'ah became the new leaders of Mecca, while the descendants of Ismail by that time have already increased in numbers and branched out and spread all over Arabia. But there was one branch that remained in Mecca. Who knows what that branch was? Or what's the name of that branch that stayed in Mecca? Quraysh. So Quraysh was one of the many different tribes who descended from Ismail alayhi salam. They are called the descendants of Adnan. So Quraysh was still living in Mecca, but now Mecca was ruled by who? By Khuza'ah. Now the leader of Khuza'ah, one of their leaders, his name is Amr ibn Luhay al-Khuza'i. We're going to talk about him later on when we touch about the religious background of Arabia. But now, we want to stick to the lineage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The head of Quraysh, his name was Qusay ibn Kilab. He was able to unify Quraysh and to lead a revolt against Khuza'ah, and he was able to drive them out completely from Mecca. So now finally a descendant of Ismail alayhi salam combined the religious and the political leadership of Mecca. Not only that, but Qusay consolidated all the authorities of the different aspects of power in his hands. He controlled al-hijaba, which was the guardianship of al-Kaaba. So it was a very noble thing, So he was the guardian of al-Kaaba. He controlled al-siqaya, al-ifada, which was the provision of water and food for the pilgrims. Now to you it seems not a big deal. I mean, so what if he was providing food and drink to the pilgrims? To them, this was considered such a great honor that you are the one providing for the guests of Allah. So they used to fight over this. What this responsibility entails is all of the Arabs who come for pilgrimage would be hosted by the people of Quraysh. They would provide them with food throughout their stay during the season of Hajj. So Qusay was also responsible for that. He also had control over Al-Nadwa. Al-Nadwa was the assembly of Quraysh. It was like their parliament. He had control over that. And also had control over Al-Liwa. Al-Liwa is the banner of war. So he had the power to declare war. So these were the authorities that Qusay ibn Kilab had. Basically, he had every authority that existed in Mecca. So he was the absolute ruler of Mecca. Now, Qusay ibn Kilab, when he died, these different aspects of authorities were split amongst his children. Some were with Abdul Manaf, and some were with the other brothers. The grandson of Qusay, his name is Amr. He ended up inheriting from him the provision of Al-Hujjaj, providing them with food and drink. Amr did something new in feeding Al-Hujjaj. Rather than providing them with soup, he would cook the meat, they would cook the meat in big containers, and then they would feed the people soup, because that way you could feed a large number. What Amr did, he started crushing the bread into the soup. So he would mix the bread in the soup, which was an upgrade to their meal. Rather than just giving them soup, they're having soup with bread. The process of crushing the bread, in Arabic it's called hashm. When you crush something, it's called hashm. So he was nicknamed what? Hashim. So they nicknamed this man Amr, they called him now Hashim. And this was due to this was the great grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was named Hashim because of crushing the bread. That wasn't his real name. His real name is Amr. Now Hashim married from Al-Madinah. He got married from Al-Madinah, and then he went to Palestine to do business, and he passed away in Gaza. He died in Gaza. He died and was buried in Gaza. His wife became pregnant, and she gave birth to a child who was named Shayba. Now Shayba means what? Old man. Now why would anybody call a child Shayba? The reason was that he was born with some gray hair. So they named him Shayba, and because his father passed away, the mother stayed with her parents in Medina. He was brought up by his family in Medina. One day, a man comes to Medina. His name is Al-Muttalib. Al-Muttalib is Hashim's brother. He went into Medina and he went to claim his nephew, because Hashim's son Shayba was living in Medina. So his uncle Al-Muttalib came to claim him when he was about 8 years old. He said, we want to take him back to Mecca. The mother's side of the family refused to give him up. But then Al-Muttalib was able to convince them by saying he belongs to the most noble family in Quraysh. And he has to come back and learn about his heritage and learn about his family and start assuming responsibilities in Mecca. Eventually they agreed to allow him to go. So Al-Muttalib took this child to Mecca. Now nobody in Mecca has ever seen this child before. And in those days, slavery was quite common. You go to the market and you buy a slave and you just walk with that slave into Mecca. Since they haven't seen this boy before, they assumed that he is the slave of Al-Muttalib. So they called him Abd al-Muttalib. And this is the grandfather of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So his real name was Shayba. But he was nicknamed Abd al-Muttalib because they thought he was the slave of his uncle. And usually, they would buy the slaves at a young age so that they can raise them up and train them to do whatever they want them to do. So they would purchase them when they are young. So they thought that he was a slave, and he was named Abd al-Muttalib, the slave of Al-Muttalib. Abd al-Muttalib means the slave of Al-Muttalib. So now we got to the grandfather of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We talked about Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismail. We talked about Qusay ibn Kilab. Then we talked about Hashim. We talked about Abd al-Muttalib. Do we have time to continue? Now we'll spend some time talking about Abd al-Muttalib because of a few important events that happened to him. Actually, two important events that occurred with Abd al-Muttalib. Remember the well of Zamzam? It was unknown because Jurham erased all of its marks They filled it up and erased all of its marks. Now Zamzam has not been known now for about what? 300 years. Because Khuza'ah has ruled over Mecca for 300 years. And then add to that the time of Qusay ibn Kilab all the way down to Abdul Muttalib. So we're talking about 300 years plus. So the well of Zamzam was lost for over 300 years. Abdul Muttalib sees a dream. Someone comes to him and tells him, Uhfur Tayba, dig Tayba. Tayba means pure. Abdul Muttalib in his dream is responding and saying, what is Tayba? He doesn't hear anything back. That was the end of the dream. The following night, the same voice comes to him and tells him, Uhfur Barra, dig the precious. Abdul Muttalib says, what is the precious? He doesn't hear an answer back. The third night, the same voice comes to him and says, Uhfur Zamzam, dig Zamzam. Abdul Muttalib asks, what is Zamzam? The voice tells him, Zamzam لا تفنى ولا تذم تسقي الحجيج الأعظم بين الفرث والدم عند قرية النمل عند نقرة الغراب الأعصم. The voice tells him it will never fail or dry up. It will water the grand pilgrim. It lies between the dung and the blood near the nest of the crow with the white leg and the ant's nest. So it's all symbols, and Abdul Muttalib is unable to decode all of these symbols. Zamzam, it never runs out of water. SubhanAllah, and it will provide for the grand pilgrim, meaning Hajj every year, and it will be sufficient to provide water for all of them. But then it goes into saying between the dung and the blood, and then the crow with the white leg, and the nest of the ants. All of these are obscure things to Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib, on the next day, he was going around the Kaaba, and he sees dung and blood. There was a camel that was slaughtered in that place. They left its insides and the blood was on the other side. And then he sees a crow with a white leg in the same area. And there was a colony of ants. Abdul Muttalib realizes that this is where the well of my grandfather is. So he called his son Al-Harith and they started digging. Now, Zamzam, for those of you who have not been to Mecca, is not far away from the Kaaba. So here you have Abdul Muttalib and his son digging next to Al-Kaaba. Obviously, this would anger the people of Quraysh. I mean, what are they doing? You know, they're digging next to Al-Kaaba. So they told him, what are you doing? Abdul Muttalib continued working, and they kept protesting. And he continued digging with his son Al-Harith. At that time, Abdul Muttalib had only one son. So they were digging and digging and digging, and people are wondering, you know, what's going on? What is this man digging for? What is he looking for? So they left him, or they left him alone, and suddenly they heard Abdul Muttalib shout, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they came rushing. To their amazement, they found that Abdul Muttalib has uncovered the rim of the well of Zamzam. SubhanAllah. So now all the leaders of Quraysh came and said, yes, this is the well of our grandfather Ismail alayhi salam. This belongs to all of us. Abdul Muttalib says, wait a minute. I was the one who saw the dream. I was the one who uncovered it. It belongs to me and to me alone. They said, no way. You know, we are all descendants of Ismail alayhi salam. It belongs to all of us. Abdul Muttalib refused to give up. He refused, and they kept on insisting. So when they were unable to solve this dispute and they were about to go to war over it, someone suggested to them, let's solve this dispute by going to the witch of Bani Sa'd. Bani Sa'd, they had this witch who claims to have connections with spirits. So let's go to her and seek her consultation. So they traveled to this witch, and they were told that she relocated and went to Syria. They said, well, you know, let's follow her wherever she is. And they started their journey towards Syria, and along the way, they ran out of water. They were in the middle of nowhere, in the desert. And Abdul Muttalib told them, if we are going to die here, let's at least dig our graves. And whenever one of us dies, the rest will put him in the grave and cover him. So at the end, we are left with one person uncovered rather than having all of us die exposed. At least let's honor our dead and just have one without burial. So they all dug their graves and waited in their graves for death. And then Abdul Muttalib said, this is not right for men like us to sit here and wait for death. Let's do something. Let's go and search for water. So they agreed. They went in different directions, searching for water. After a short while, Abdul Muttalib found water. So they came to him and said, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has saved you in this desert and provided you with water, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown you a dream in which you uncovered the well of Zamzam, this is surely an indication that's a blessing for you and it belongs to you. So we give up our claim, it's all yours, let's go back. So they gave it up and they agreed to submit to Abdul Muttalib, and it was his. So this is one important story that happened with Abdul Muttalib. Now, when the whole incident happened, when they pressured him, when they came to him and said, this belongs to all of us, Abdul Muttalib felt that he was weak because he had only one son to defend him. You know, in the tribal societies, your strength is based on how many men you have on your side. And you can only count on your relatives. That's how life is in the desert. Your strength is based on how many sons, how many men you have on your side. So how many brothers, how many uncles, that's your strength. So Abdul Muttalib felt weak. He has only one son on his side, Al-Harith. So he said in a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, if you bestow on me 10 sons, I will sacrifice one of them for your sake. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did bless him with 10 male sons and 6 daughters. So when he had 10, now it's time for what? It's time for him to fulfill his promise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he has to sacrifice one of them. Now they had these arrows next to Hubal. Hubal was one of their large idols, billah. They believed that these arrows were divine, so they would cast lots, leaving choices, these choices. They would leave the decision up to this random way of casting lots. So Abdul Muttalib had the names of all of his sons, on these arrows. So one of them, of course, was Abdullah. One of his sons, his name is Abdullah. He did it, he threw the dice or threw the arrow, and it came upon Abdullah. He did it the second time, it came on Abdullah. He did it the third time, it came on Abdullah. So Abdul Muttalib took his son Abdullah right next to the Kaaba and was ready with a knife to slaughter him. Abu Talib, one of the elder sons of Abdul Muttalib, went to his father and said, we cannot allow you to kill your son. And then the maternal relatives of Abdullah came and said, we are not going to allow you to kill our son. And people were coming in and were telling Abdul Muttalib, if you do it, it will become a sunnah, for the Arabs after you, because Abdul Muttalib was their leader. So if he did something, it would become a trend after that. And they said, if you do it, then any one of us who has 10 sons will follow your footsteps and we'll be killing each other. I mean, they were already killing their daughters, and now they will start killing their sons. So they insisted on Abdul Muttalib not to do it. Abdul Muttalib told them, this was a pledge that I made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I cannot give it up. I cannot break my promise. They told him, no way. They had this dispute. How can they solve this dispute? Let's go to the witch. So they decided to go to the witch again. They went to the witch and told her, this is the situation. She said, all right, come to me tomorrow so that I can consult my spirits this evening. Tonight I will speak to the jinn. They came back the next day and she had an answer for them. She told them, what is the retribution that you pay to a person that was killed, the diya, the blood money? How much is it? They said 10 camels. She said, then put 10 camels on one side and put Abdullah on the other side and cast lots, and if it points towards the camels, then slaughter the camels. If it points towards Abdullah, then add another 10 camels. So they agreed and they went back. So Abdul Muttalib with all of the people of Quraysh, they came together, and Abdullah on one side and the camels on the other side, and they threw the dice or the arrows and it pointed toward Abdullah. So they added another 10 camels. They did it again and it pointed toward Abdullah. They added another 10 camels, another 10 camels, until they reached how many? Who knows? 100. SubhanAllah. So they had 100 camels on one side and Abdullah on the other side. Finally, it pointed toward the camels. The people of Quraysh said, finally we can release your son. Abdul Muttalib said, not yet. I'll have to do it another time. And he did it the second time, and the third time. It was consistently pointing towards the camels. So he slaughtered how many? 100 camels, subhanAllah. And he had to pay for it all. Abdul Muttalib was a very generous man. He would refuse to take any of that meat. He gave it out, and there was so much meat. People ate so much, and there was left so much to feed the birds and the beasts. So later on, they would say, it became famous among the Arab that Abdul Muttalib was the one who fed the humans and the animals. Mut'am al-Tayr fi sama. He was the one who fed the birds in the sky. And we're going to talk about an incident where this saying was brought out in a conversation with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and one of the leaders of the clan. Now the people of Quraysh were right when they told Abdul Muttalib, if you kill your son, it would become a tradition amongst the Arabs after because when Abdul Muttalib sacrificed 100 camels to save his son, the blood money among them changed from 10 camels to 100 camels because of what happened with Abdul Muttalib. So the retribution that is paid was 100 rather than 10. And by the way, this tradition was kept and reserved by Islam. So the diya still today 100 camels. However, it is now calculated in terms of currency, but it is still based on that concept. This is the story of Abdullah. Now, Abdullah and Amina were the parents of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Later on, they would tell Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you are the son of the two sacrificed ones. And who are they? They are Ismail alayhi salam and Abdullah. So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the son of the two sacrificed ones. His father Abdullah and his father Ismail alayhi salam. Abdullah married Amina bint Wahb. We are done with the ancestry of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. See you next Tuesday, inshallah.